Hey, welcome to another video in my Linux series. This time I'm gonna cover the GNOME basics of the GNOME desktop environment and show a couple of tricks and customizations. When you see the desktop, there's no real icons on it, and that's essentially like you don't have icons on your desktop. Instead, what you do, generally in Windows you use icons for two things. You either use it for just throwing random files you're working with, or you can use it for shortcuts for applications. So the latter use case, GNOME has a different way of doing it. If you hit the Windows button, or if you have a laptop with a touchpad, you can put 3 fingers on the touchpad and scroll up, and then you get a bar down here. So this is where you'll place your most used applications. You can also slide further up, and then you get sort of like a home screen looking thing from your phone with more icons. You also get to it in a couple of other ways. You can tap on the more apps here. And we can also get to it from up here to this launch thing. Most of the time I just hit the Windows button and then I search for whatever I want to use, and I got it right there. So this is how I launch pretty much all applications. Some of the most well-known, well-used, I commonly used, I put down here, such that I can get to them without having to type. So if I am holding something in one hand, then I can still do most basic stuff. So sort of the things I like to put down there are, I use the console a lot. So I will certainly pin to the desk. This thing down here is called desk. So I'll certainly put that down there. I generally don't use the calendar. You can also get to calendar by up here. So I don't use that too much. By the way, you got your notifications area here, which is sometimes useful. And if you get too many notifications, you just toggle on do not disturb and they go away. So that's really neat. Yeah, so majority of what I use is web browser and music player files, and then the terminal. So I'm gonna get rid of everything else. And of course I have my code editor, but don't have that right now. Yeah, that looks about right. And then other open applications, they will show an icon with a small dot under. If you have an application open and you click on it, you are taken to that window. If you want to launch a new instance, you can right click and new window. Okay, now that we are in the file browser, the files are just called files. Let's talk about that for a bit. So right out of the box, it's really simple. You don't have a lot of stuff. You can sort of change how things are laid out up here and sort things. There are a couple of options in the menu. You generally get to menu with this burger icon. And it has a couple of different settings. It doesn't have too many settings, and that's sort of prevalent for most GNOME applications. They're rather simple, but they get the job done, what you need to do, really easy. Yeah, so another thing, pretty much all GNOME applications, they got keyboard shortcuts, and you can view them from the main menu. You can look at them yourself. I just want to go over a couple of basics. If you want to, so hidden files on Linux, you hide files by starting a file name with a period, and you can view the hidden files by pressing Ctrl and H. Now we get all the files here. So those are normally hidden, and you can make that go away again by pressing Ctrl and H at the same time. Okay, you might notice that you got a address thing up here, and if you click on it, you can start typing, and you can also get to the hidden folders. The config folder contains a bunch of configuration files. Occasionally you need to edit that, but that's sort of very advanced. Another way you can get to the address bar is simply by typing Ctrl and L. That highlights it to you. Alright, so files support tabs, and you can open stuff in different tabs by just middle clicking on something, and you get another tab. That's pretty neat. I use that quite a bit when I'm moving files between folders. And you can close a tab again by middle clicking on the tab. So yeah, I think that's super neat. You can also bookmark things you use commonly. I can't remember, I think, yeah, you can just drag it over and then it will create a new bookmark. Or you can select something, and I believe it's Control B. Nah, I can't remember. There's a shortcut to do it as well. Anyway, enough for files. If you go back to the search feature, so you can launch applications this way, but you can also get to sort of like the settings applications. You can launch that this way, but you can also search inside applications. For instance, if you want to change the display settings, you can search for display and then just launch displays here from the settings applications, and you get directly to it. So this is really fast to navigate. Another way you can navigate around the settings application, if you press Ctrl F for find, then you can start typing in stuff and it highlights whatever matches this. Alright, so I encourage you to look through the options here just to get an idea of what settings are available. If we go to accessibility menu, that's something I actually use quite a bit. So we got stuff like onboard keyboard, and you can zoom in and stuff, and you basically can turn it on with the toggle up here. Once it's turned on, you get accessibility icon here. So this is basically what they talked about in the first design principles. You can do stuff like onboard keyboard, which pops up, should pop up. Yeah, whenever you have an input field, then it pops up and you can type with your mouse if that's something you want. I don't know, I occasionally use it when I only have one hand free. An option I do use quite a lot from in here is the large text. So my laptop got a fairly high DPI display, so if I haven't hooked it up to an external monitor, things become quite small, and this provides me just with a quick way to make text a bit more readable, so I don't have to squint my eyes to see it. It's very common on GNOME. You work with multiple desktops, and it's very common to arrange your application on several desktops. You see I'm already using two. I got my screen recording over here, and then I got the stuff I'm showing here. So this is super common to have. So yeah, you might have a desktop for stuff you run in background, for the work you're currently doing, and then another for web browsing. You can switch between them in a couple of different ways. If you hit the super key, then you can see a small icon representing each of the desktops down here. You can also see what desktops you are currently on with these icons here. And if you press it, you get to the same. If you scroll over this, you can also navigate between desktops. You can also do it just by keyboard. If you press Control, Alt, and the arrow keys, that will switch you between the desktops as well. So yeah, multiple desktops is very commonly used. So that's why there are many different ways to navigate between them. Alright, if you have multiple windows open, you can drag one to the side and it will tile, and you can open up another window and you can tile them. So you can have, instead of having one window full screen, you can have two. If you want the windows full screen, you just drag it to the top and then it goes full screen. Speaking about dragging things around and resizing, if you hold down the Windows button and click anywhere on a window, you can just drag it around. So I find this super useful. So dragging only by the border, that needs a bit more mouse precision. So just being able to drag a window from everywhere, that's super useful. You also press the Windows button and then left mouse button. Middle mouse button to resize window. And you can do that pretty much anywhere within the window to resize it. So moving windows around, organizing windows is super fast. If you have two windows tiled, you can use the resize also, and you can sort of determine the split between the two windows. So I find that helps me organize windows super neatly and very fast. Makes it a lot more efficient for me to navigate around my desktop. So since you don't have any icons on your desktop, you might be wondering, so where do I put the files that I'm currently working on? And what you're supposed to do in GNOME is that you put them in the home folder. So you just open up the files and there you go, your home folder. So this is sort of where you organize all your files instead. There's one folder here that got sort of special meaning. The templates folder, that's actually quite neat. So if you right click anywhere in any folder, you're probably used to having a couple of options to create new files. We don't have that out of the box here, but we can put in template files in this folder. So if I open up a terminal, I can just make an empty file by using tuts, and then call it text.txt. So it just creates an empty file. You see no bytes, empty text file. Now when I am in any folder and I right click, I get this new document and I can create new files from the templates I put in the template folder. So I can create a text.txt file, which gives me a new empty files. And you can put all sorts of files in here. So for instance, I use it quite a lot. So I put a template file for my diagram applications. And then because I spend a lot of time on documenting work, so that allows me to easily create new diagrams just by right clicking anywhere and create a new diagram. You can also use it for other things, like you can put in files for creating spreadsheets and whatever you want. So that's super nice, very convenient. Okay, let's get into some customization. If you right click on desktop, it allows you to change the wallpaper, and there's a bunch of already. Since I find them quite boring, but since I just installed the operating system, I don't really have any wallpapers. So I use the package manager to search for wallpapers. And there's a bunch of different packages. Some belong to other operating systems, other Linux distributions that you can install. I have found that this elementary wallpapers it contains some very cool pictures. So I'm gonna install that. And now I can right click and we should somewhere have additional. Alright, it doesn't show up. We can query the packets for what files it contains with JQL, and it shows the files here. So we find the new backgrounds in user share backgrounds. If we go to change background and then add pictures, then Control L to get to the location bar, then we can type in user USR. It kind of looks like misspelling, but it's actually shorthand for Unix system resources, because basically Linux is a Unix style operating system. Anyway, yeah, that is a backstory for another day. So we navigate to background folder, and yeah, I think I'm just gonna add everything except the GNOME, and that should give us a bunch of more options to choose from. So I kind of like this package because there are some really pretty icons, really pretty backgrounds in here. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with this. This looks nice and calm. Let's get rid of all this. So yeah, I like that. By the way, you see, might notice there's no minimize button. Generally I have it set up so I just middle click on the title bar and then it makes it goes away. To do this configuration we need the Tweaks app. So if you search for Tweaks, you're probably gonna get it. If it doesn't show up, you might need to install it. So we can use Yay to do that. We search for Tweaks, so it is the GNOME Tweaks here. So you'll install it like this. But I already got it, so let's have a look inside. There's also a bunch of other cool things you could do. So this tweak applications contain a bunch of tweaks that isn't found in the settings. Some more stuff you could change. If I go to Windows and then if I select middle click and then I can change it to minimize. You also toggle on buttons to maximize and minimize. I like less clutter, so I just leave those off. The buttons are fairly difficult to hit anyway, so I rarely use the title bar buttons. Now I just click anywhere on the title bar and the app minimizes. So that's pretty cool. It's super easy to get rid of all the windows that clutter up your desktop. There are a bunch of other settings you can tweak in here. Yeah. If you find that the text is difficult to read because the resolution of your monitor is too high, there are basically two ways you can go around that. You can go into the Tweaks tab and fonts here. If you scroll all the way down, you can enter a scale factor, so that just makes the text a bit bigger. The other way you can go around it is if you go into the settings app and then find displays, then you can set a scale factor here. So the scale factor only scales with 100% increments. So 200, that's gonna be very big. So I don't know, I kind of use the other instead or use large text. From within here we can also set on night light. That makes the color temperature of everything you see on the screen a bit more warm when we have sunset, such that it's easier on your eyes. Some people like this stuff. I personally don't use it, but it's there. If you find that some symbols aren't shown up, you can test that by going into the characters app. If you have a lot of squares where symbol doesn't show up for any of the categories, you might be missing a font. with the special symbols, and you fix that by installing these two fonts running this command. Another way you can customize your GNOME desktop experience even further is with extensions. There are basically two ways you can go around installing extensions. You can go to the GNOME extensions website and install them from there. What I like to do is I like to use the extensions app. Not extensions app, but extension manager app. We can install it from the Arch user repository like this. When it's done installing, we can launch it. There's already one extension app built in, so this only allows you to enable extensions that's already there. What we want is the one with the blue icon called Extension Manager. So this thing is pretty cool. It allows us to quickly search for applications and download new ones. Some of the extensions I like to use is the app menu. So basically just gives you a menu where all your apps are organized into different categories. So it's just a different way to launch applications or organize applications compared to this thing. The next is GNOME UI improvements. So if you notice on the activity view, the preview for desktops are rather small. We have this search box taking up some space. If I toggle UI improvements on, we get much bigger previews of the desktops, and the search bar is hidden, though as soon as I begin typing something, it shows up. So small tweak, but I like it. Then we have the app indicator. So some applications that got sort of like a tray icon that they use, and that doesn't show up by default in GNOME unless you enable this extension. An extension I have a really hard time labeling it out is GS Connect extension. It should be installed from the Arch user repository instead of the extension manager. If you have an Android phone, it lets you have really nice integrations where you can just share files back and forth, and you can control your phone from your computer and your computer from your phone, and you can even send text messages directly from your desktop. The screenshot is from a really old GNOME, so it looks quite different, but it just illustrates the functionality you can send to your phone. Here is shown the phones you got paired with. It shows battery status, battery life on your phone, and you can share notifications between your desktop and your phone. You also have your clipboard shared between your devices. For it to work, you need KDE Connect app installed on your phone, and you can find that in the App Store. Then you just pair your phone with your computer, and you can share all sorts of stuff between them. You might also be interested in the clipboard indicator, which basically just gives you a history of your clipboard. If you want the same sort of window styling behavior you got on Windows, there's a couple of extensions for that. There's one called WinTile Beyond. I guess from the description sounds like that's what it does. I don't know, I don't use these. So yeah, extensions provide a really powerful way to further customize your desktop experience. A bit of a warning though, if you have too many extensions installed at the same time, they might not have been tested together, and they can make your desktop unstable. That was the basic of GNOME. There's of course lots more to it, but to keep this video relatively short, this is what I chose to show.